Welcome to Strength in Solitude, where we talk about the space between what we imagine and what actually happens in raising kids today. I'm Bebeth, and in this episode, we're diving into the wild ride of modern parenting, from picture perfect plans to unexpected plot twist. We'll explore the myth, the mess, and the magic of raising little humans in a world full of pressure and possibility. So grab your coffee or hit it for the third time, and let's get real.
Welcome to Co-Pilot Podcasts. Did you know that nearly half of today's parents say their stress is completely overwhelming most days? That's almost double the rate of non-parents. Today, we're diving into the reality check of modern parenting, the expectations, the pressures, and the surprising truth about what's really happening behind those perfect Instagram posts.
And those numbers are really just the tip of the iceberg when we look at what parents are dealing with today.
I mean, we're talking about a generation of parents facing unprecedented challenges, right?
Absolutely. According to recent research, 53.7% of parents are experiencing moderate to high levels of parenting stress. And that's not just about the day-to-day challenges of raising kids.
What's driving those numbers so high?
Well, it's fascinating, actually. The research shows it's this perfect storm of factors. You've got economic inflation stressing out 59.3% of parents, social division worrying 49.3%, and then there's this whole technology piece.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the technology piece, because that's something completely new to this generation of parents, isn't it?
It really is. Get this. 85% of parents feel that social media creates unrealistic parenting expectations. And what's even more concerning is that 25% don't verify parenting advice they get from these platforms.
Wait, so 1 in 4 parents are just taking social media advice at face value?
Exactly. And when you combine that with the fact that children aged 11 to 14 are spending up to 9 hours per day on screens, parents are really navigating uncharted territory.
That's wild. You know what's interesting though? I saw some research about how different generations are handling these challenges.
Oh, this is fascinating, actually. Recent studies show a really clear split between Gen Z and millennial parents.
How so?
Well, according to a 𝗥𝗘𝗔𝗟 Academy survey, 54% of Gen Z parents are focusing on preparing their kids for the real world, while 62% of millennial parents are prioritizing mental and emotional well-being.
That's such an interesting divide. Why do you think that is?
It really reflects their own experiences. Millennials came of age during the rise of mental health awareness, while Gen Z experienced the pandemic job losses and economic uncertainty firsthand.
And speaking of economic uncertainty, that's a huge factor for today's parents, isn't it?
Huge. The research shows that economic inflation is actually the number one stressor for modern parents, with nearly 60% saying it's causing significant stress.
That's a lot of pressure.
And you know what's interesting? This is actually affecting when people become parents too.
How so?
Well, the average age of first-time parenthood has jumped from 21.4 in 1970 to 27.4 in 2022. People are waiting longer, largely due to economic factors.
That's a pretty dramatic shift in just a few decades.
It really is. And it's part of this larger trend where parenting has become more intentional but also more pressure-filled.
Let's talk about mental health, because that seems to be a huge concern for modern parents.
According to recent data, 40% of US parents are extremely or very worried about their children struggling with anxiety or depression.
That's their top concern?
Yes, it actually ranks higher than concerns about bullying, drugs, or physical safety. And it's not just about the kids. 13.5% of parents show signs of anxiety symptoms, while 14.6% exhibit signs of depression.
Those are some sobering statistics.
And here's what's particularly concerning. These issues aren't going away after the pandemic.
No?
No. Research shows that 31.6% of families are still experiencing major burden from the pandemic's lingering effects.
That's really interesting, because it seems like everyone just wants to move on and pretend everything's back to normal.
Exactly. But the reality is that parents are still dealing with the aftermath while facing new challenges.
Let's talk about some of those new challenges. What are parents most worried about right now?
Well, beyond economic concerns, there's significant worry about social division. Nearly half of parents say they're stressed about increasing radicalization and social division in society.
That's not something our parents really had to worry about, is it?
Not at all. The social media era has completely changed how we experience societal divisions. Parents today have to navigate raising children in an increasingly polarized world.
And they're doing this while being constantly bombarded with parenting advice and judgment online.
Right, and that's where we're seeing this interesting shift in how parents are responding to all this pressure.
What kind of shift?
Well, research shows that 70% of parents are now choosing their parenting styles based on what their individual child needs rather than trying to follow one rigid approach.
That sounds like a more flexible approach than previous generations.
It is, and it's really interesting to see how parents are adapting. About 37% are actively working to break cycles of generational trauma, while 33% are focusing on attachment parenting.
So they're really thinking critically about their own upbringing and making conscious choices about what to keep or change?
Exactly. And this is where we're seeing that split between generations again. Gen X parents, for instance, tend to be more involved and focused on learning about parenting techniques.
How does that compare to younger parents?
Younger parents are much more likely to seek advice through digital channels, TikTok, YouTube, podcasts. They're hyper-connected and looking for quick, relatable guidance.
But that brings its own challenges, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The constant access to information can lead to decision fatigue. Parents are overwhelmed by choices and the pressure to get it right.
That's gotta be exhausting.
It is, and it's creating this interesting paradox where parents have more information than ever, but they're also more stressed and uncertain.
So what's the solution? How do we bridge this gap between expectations and reality?
Well, the research suggests that flexibility is key. Parents who can adapt their approach based on their child's needs tend to report less stress.
And what about all the pressure from social media?
That's where being selective with information sources becomes crucial. Remember that statistic about 25% of parents not verifying online advice? That's something we really need to address.
It sounds like modern parents need to be really intentional about managing these pressures.
Exactly. And the data shows that parents who focus on what works for their specific family, rather than trying to meet external expectations, tend to report better outcomes.
So maybe the real expectation we should have is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach?
That's exactly right. The research consistently shows that successful modern parenting is about flexibility and authenticity, not perfection.
You know what's interesting? Despite all these challenges, parents are still finding ways to adapt and thrive.
Yes, and that's perhaps the most important point. Despite the stress, despite the pressure, parents are becoming more intentional and thoughtful about how they raise their children.
So when you step back from everything we've discussed today, what's the key takeaway for modern parents?
I think it's that while the challenges of modern parenting are real and significant, the solution isn't about meeting impossible standards. It's about finding what works for your family.
And maybe that's the reality check we all needed, that perfect parenting isn't the goal, effective parenting is.
Exactly. And remember that statistic we started with? About half of parents feeling overwhelmed? Well, maybe knowing we're all in this together is the first step to making it more manageable.
And with that reality check, we'll wrap up today's episode of Co-Pilot Podcasts. Remember, you're not failing at parenting, you're just experiencing what 53.7% of other parents are going through too. Thanks for listening.
If today's episode made you laugh, cry, or feel a little less alone, share it with fellow parent who needs to hear it. Remember, there's no perfect way to parent, just your way. Keep showing up, keep loving hard, and keep giving yourself grace. Until next time, I'm Bebeth, and this is where real parenting lives.